Ready to move to the next level in your product career? I'm Shobhit from Intentional Product Manager. Join me as we discuss ways to help you stand out in your job search and your career so you can have more impact and make more money. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Intentional Product Manager podcast, the show where we don't just talk about product, we help you become a better product leader. Today we are diving deep into a hot topic that's shaking up how tech orgs are built, the rise of the CPTO model, Chief Product and Technology Officer. If you've ever felt stuck between tactical delivery, long-term strategy, building tech teams, and wondered how do you earn a seat at the leadership table, well, this episode is for you. I couldn't ask for a better guest. He's got an amazing name. So today we are joined by Shobhit Jain, who's CPTO at Rekor, product and tech executive, board advisor, and one of the sharpest minds in smart mobility and advanced tech. Shobhit, welcome to the podcast.
Shobhit, thank you. And I agree, it's an amazing name.
It's an absolutely amazing name. We've known each other for a while. We went to same business school. So yeah, I've known Shobhit for a while. So let's start with some fire starters, Shobhit. Most product managers, they are familiar with Claire Vaux and her article Making Waves with the idea that product management is dead. You must have seen the post. What's your take, especially now you're wearing both the CPO and the CTO hats?
Yeah, thanks, Shobhit, again for having me on this podcast. Yeah, I've been product manager, I want to say since 17, 18 years, probably almost 20 years. And something which is a skill set that it took me years to refine it and being very introspective how I think about this product management skills. And now, as we kind of heading into as the industries are connecting, the transportation industry is connected with infrastructure industry, the job of product manager becomes even much more, I would say, mindful and intentional, right? Because you have to be much more specific into your segmentation, the customer feedback, all the things that product manager needs to do. But I do think that with AI, something that would have taken us as a product manager, as a function to do over months. Something Claire talks about it, about product strategy. And we have gone through that where you take tons of customer feedback, you build this hypothesis, then you get some people still not happy with it. You go to the refinement and over the months, you come with this a very holistic document, something that can be done with AI very relatively easy. So you start asking a skill set, an experience, that all something we learn all the time, is that becoming slightly a commodity with AI? And I believe that is more than a commodity, becomes a way of thinking, not a function, but as a system. So the way that I take from what Claire will talk about, product management is dead. I know it's a little bit provocative statement, but I consider that as a way for us to start thinking in terms of how do we start building not functions that can deliver part of our workflow, but think about product as a holistic. And if you start thinking about the product as holistic, then you don't build the teams around the function, you build the team around the system. And that's where I believe, she talks about the three threads, product design engineering, which I agree. I have a product manager, a fantastic product manager, and that, product manager wants to do some prototype. And we have some capacity issue in engineering team. We have some design issues because obviously there's always a capacity planning that's happening over weeks and months. And it's a skill that person was able to develop, on his own and able to build a prototype really, really fast and able to create some wireframe, something which I think is happening more and more. So if you think in terms of that, then you are really not looking in terms of a handover of a function to another function to another function. You're thinking in terms of how do you think about it as a system, and you becoming not just working as a collaborative team, you're thinking as a machine, as a mindset that actually can deliver the system. So that's where, the fundamental of my evolution from product management to how we think about product delivery, I think started about coming as well. And the CP2, I think, is a step towards it. I'm pretty sure it's going to evolve even more, maybe marketing. I'm not sure how the world will look like in 4 or 5 years, but I do think the product and technology becomes a very cohesive function that let us think about the system versus individual functions.
You said some super interesting things here. You mentioned, this triad model of product manager, engineering, design. Are those divisions still relevant? And how do you see those specific job functions, if you will, evolve over time?
I think you're going to have certain systems which might be still extremely requires a deep knowledge base. For example, my company, Recor, we are an AI company, but we also build our own edge systems. Our AI is designed to identify traffic flow, traffic vehicles, and that's our core competency is, but that deployment is very much on the edge system. So that embedded system means understanding the hardware knowledge. You need those specific SMEs, subject matter experts, similarly in AI as well. But in terms of, when we think in terms the layers, the applications layers on top of it, or we think in terms of design layers on top of it, or the customer feedback loop, I think those becomes much more integrated. And that's what the evolution, I think, already started happening. So when I'm building my organization too, it's not just coming up, 20 superhumans. The idea is not to build a CPTO, the best 20 super individual and build a team around it. It's build a layer that allow us to understand how we need to build our core competency that may not be able to commoditize by getting transferable, functions or skill set, but then have a layer on top of it that it's going to move us faster. And that's something that I think is going to evolve as we as we move on in the next year or two. But that's the way I kind of think in terms of understanding your core competency very clearly.
One of the things I hear as you say this is sort of fewer cases where people are completely blocked on the other person. Like, for example, in prototyping, you need a designer to even prototype. Now you can get that done, but you might want the UX team involved in the production design. Is that starting to happen?
Yes, exactly. I think I'm finding more and more opportunities for team to be a lot more innovative and becoming problem solvers versus becoming of workflow managers. And because I think what happens when you think about the workflow managers, you're not able to look at holistically the whole thing. You're, trusting your team, which is great. That design is going to do this way, and then you trust the wireframes, you trust the engineering is going to develop that, and then there's a not complete a holistic view of how this is happening. But now you're in those discussions, and not only you're in the discussions, you're carrying those weights too. Likewise, I mentioned the product manager working on some prototyping, doing some engineering work. I had a product engineer working on PRD, and this is something. His brain is going, just going crazy because he's been always complaining, for the last many years that I don't have a good priority from product managers, and he's building it. And it's something would have taken months to build it. He's doing it in days while he is, still doing his personal stuff, taking his kids to, dropping off school. So I think that's where it becoming, that way of getting the people who are able to understand where they need to pick up and able to understand, what the end goal is. So one of the key things with CPTO model is that one of my job is to be very clear on the vision and the goals. That is an absolutely, must have. If you don't have this, then it can become a combination of exercise, which feels like experimentation and incubation. And you need to make sure that this is business first and less about incubation. So I think the vision becomes really important. And that's pretty priority my job. It's how do we make sure that we keep very clear goals and milestones?
So talk to me a bit more about the CPTO role. What does it involve? How did it come about? And how did you come about in this role?
So I'll use both in terms of what's happening very specific at Recor and also what's been happening in my brain for the last 2-3 years, especially with the explosion of AI. Like I said, I've been a product manager for 17, 18 years, something which I, put the badge of honor and always be, driving how product management is the center of the universe, right? And of course, you're realizing that with AI, things are becoming commoditized. I can do something which I would take me, months or weeks to do it, within relatively a day. So you start thinking, what is actually the role of product management? How they're adding value? And in the meantime, we have some major shift in the company at Recor. And I started at Recor as a senior VP of product, basically a CPO. And we had already a person who was leading a technology office. And the person was very much focusing on the technology in a way that is driving more from a basics, I would say, uh, fundamental problems, almost like working as like a chief science officer versus a technology officer. And when our the new CEO, who's the owner of the company as well, we start talking. It was very clear to me that all these things needs to be connected to the business priorities. And the role CPTO really came around where we are bridging product and technology, not as function, as a system to deliver our business priorities. And I think that was very clear to me that even if a person may not be thinking to combine product and technology, we have to start bridging the product and technology as a system. And the timing is perfect right now. Maybe we already should have done this. Maybe the triad that we have created with product engineering and design, we should also have brought the business person in the triad as well, so that the quad becomes extremely connected. But now I think that becomes even much more important. And the CPTO role is really delivering that, is not focusing on just building the best product, is building the product that's actually drive the business goals. And that's it came about. And I think it's a major shift we're making in the company, but it's also, I think, it's connecting with our customers as well, really well, because they see us being much more faster turnaround. And we are also talking their language in terms of their business needs versus pushing our product as a best value prop.
This is very helpful. It's great to see your thinking in terms of that system rather than functions. And that's what seems to have evolved this. Okay, let's talk a bit more about scaling and product strategy. So one of the toughest shifts I see is when a product manager used to execution and now is tasked with more strategic thinking. Now, you've led innovation organizations, you scale teams, you build for governments and whatnot. How do you personally balance long-term vision with near-time fires or urgent needs?
I think I've struggled on that aspect. I would say in different different parts of either companies and industries, and it's been always a very, I would say, introspective and learning scale or learning cycle for me. I also feel like I've been very idealist in that behavior initially. I want to make sure the product is very close to the customer needs and the market needs. And, I think it was like 2017, I was taking this, maybe it's 2018, I took this course from this great mind, Jeffrey Moore. And we had this continuing education program through my company. So we were this 3 days at this workshop with Jeffrey Moore and some other leaders as well. And that's when I got introduced to this book, Zone to Win. And that kind of really put the perspective for me. And just to kind of quick snapshot, Zone to Win is obviously, about how do you balance 4 different strategic zones, which are performance, productivity, transformation, and incubation. I kind of start, leveraging those ideas in the way I would start building my product strategy. And if I think in terms of most of the companies, they're trying to figure out how to balance in terms of how they drive their revenue performance. So revenue is something that is going to help the company. Revenue and the cash flow and the profit is their oxygen. That's what the company keeps growing. When you think about transformation or incubation, some of those things may not pan out the way you're actually thinking about it in terms of your long-term strategy. But it doesn't mean that you don't build that. You just have to be very adaptable and flexible. For me, it's very important that balancing your revenue performance with your model of long-term strategy. And if you're able to achieve quick wins in your short-term revenue goals, then I think your long-term strategy becomes a much holistic. And what I mean by holistic, that you are not reactive. You're not doing ad hoc decisions. You're still on that journey on trying to achieve your long-term goals. But if you're not able to have quick wins, you're going to make ad hoc decisions. You're going to be reactive. You're going to start doubting your long-term strategy. You probably would start, trying to do some very maybe tactical decisions, trying to do some quick M&A to drive some growth, or going perhaps into commoditizing your product, marginalizing or compromising on your pricing. So your quick wins has to be very clear. And that's where you need to understand that what are the factors that are driving quick wins? Is your product? Is your sales? Is your business development? Is your segmentation? And of course, you would realize that you're probably asking the wrong questions, or trying to answer or trying to tackle the wrong questions. Maybe it's not the product market fit is the issue. Maybe your sales enablement is not clear. Your sales is not completely equipped to drive the sales. And that's all what's not driving your quick win. It's not the product market fit. So I think once you start, driving the machine of quick wins and making sure that you remove the hurdles, then you are able to sustain your long-term strategy with the idea of that you need to be adaptable. But if you're not able to have quick wins and if you're not focusing on revenue, then you're going to be completely this motion of transformation. And eventually you're gonna lose either your trust from the investors or even your own team. So for me, it's very important that you lining your strategy with quick wins. And quick wins is not, I would say, it's not accidental. It's also very strategized. You have to have a very clear playbook. How are you actually achieving those quick wins with specific team and with timelines and of course the business goals.
I love this new book. I put it as something to check out, and it seems like it's a lot about like figuring out where the bottleneck is, and also like not be addicted to near-term wins, which a lot of companies do. It's like there's an addiction to, okay, is revenue gone up, has this happened, and being able to think longer term systematically. Okay, so let's make this tactical. So imagine you're coaching a product manager or a director of product who's getting pulled into delivery chaos all the time. How would you help them get out of the weeds and steer towards longer term thinking?
Yeah, I think one of the product manager goal is the stakeholdership. I think the key product management goal is not even, I would say, the strategy is really important. But like I said, strategy is becoming slightly commoditized. What is not becoming commoditized, and AI is still not going to really provide that for you, is stakeholdership. And what I meant by that is really, being the influence. One of the terms that people sometimes use for product managers that they are the CEO of the product. That kind of irks me a little bit because I think it really doesn't capture the nuance and the complexity of what product managers actually do. They're not making decisions. They're really influencing, and they're really doing in a way that actually allows their stakeholders to believe in what and why is doing is right. In order for them to have this stakeholdership and able to influence, I think that's where they need to make sure that they're very clear on the product goals. If they're not able to articulate that and communicate that, then no one's going to believe in this. For my team, which I'm doing constantly, is making sure that the tools that we have with AI and everything, these are the tools, but we should have a very robust discussion on the value proposition. I'm very, very big on value proposition, something that we master in a way that my team knows. That's probably one of my two favorite words, but it's very clear to me. Value proposition is understanding your segment, understanding their needs, understanding your product market fit, and able to understand how do you able to create a benefit for that particular market and why it's you, not your competitors. If you're able to articulate that, then through your stakeholdership, you can able to dial up and dial down in terms of what areas that you need to be able to influence them. So what exactly the sales guys would need. I think a lot of things, what happens that because they're the product managers, they're so focused on delivering the requirements, they're delivering, the bells and whistles, that they actually almost lose the sight of what exactly the value prop. And they themselves will trying to almost patch things to build a combination of features versus the core value prop. And if you don't have the core value prop, then how are you going to create a roadmap? Because your roadmap is a promise to the company and the customers, right? So I would, I find, the product management basic mindset is what's actually going to help product managers to not lose the focus on long-term strategy. And those are, it's like looking product management at the molecular level. What are the key attributes that drive product management? Is understanding a clear customer pain points, building the value proposition, having a very good robust business model, and able to understand your core competencies. If you're able to build that, then you're just able to use that as a platform to drive your long-term strategy. So strategy to me is only can work if you are able to think through what's the measurements that you're driving for your products, and able to articulate in a way that people are getting it, and then from there you can build on top of it. Otherwise, you're gonna just have a shifting model.
So I understand a lot here. Let's talk a bit about maybe landing some of these roles. So, like one of the things at Intentional Product Manager we talk about is helping a client shape a signature leadership narrative. Because, like when you're going for a senior level, you've got to have some story that's inspiring. If you were to advise someone, let's say, who's going for a VP or a CPO or a CPTO role, what would be your advice on them shaping their story to help them be able to land those sort of roles?
This is a great question, Shobhit. I actually ask myself too, still, what advice I can give it to myself. But it's a question that I get asked from my team I see they're not only aspiring leaders, but they are the future leaders of the company. I think one, and I mentioned a little bit about it, one of my advices for product manager is to not, think about the stakeholdership. Be very, very mindful of the influence model. I consider the chief, they're not the CEO of the product. They're the chief influencer officer of their product. So I think that's my number one suggestion, that you got to be the chief influencer officer. The second thing, which I think as you kind of going up in your trajectory, both in terms of your career, you gotta be a lot more introspective without playing, your work hat and your personal hat. And what I mean by that is that your world, your experiences, even personal experiences, whatever you do, it all comes together. For me, one of the things which have been extremely important is to also within my, with my family, or even the things which I do outside of work, this all kind of relates back to how I operate in a very mindful way at work as well. And, all those experiences are very key to drive your executive presence, so to speak. So I would say, for me is my two advice is think your relationship in the company, not just your function, your role as a product function. And the relationship with the company means that you have to manage your stakeholdership. That's the number one thing. That's a VP or CPTO role. That means that your stakeholdership with your peers, with your financial officers, with your business owners, even with the investors and boards. So you have to be very, very clear. How are you going to manage the stakeholdership? And the second thing, which I would say that be more fluid in your mind, be more fluid in terms of your experiences. And I think, with time and age, one of the things you become humble in terms of your failures, and that's actually a good thing. And the more you're able to kind of let that go in terms of this idea of perfection, of 100% achievable, that's going to actually sometimes not allow you to grow and learn. So that to me is a continuous, introspection and learning from all your experiences. I think that'll just you make a better holistic leader.
Shobhit, thank you. I'm going to ask you some fun closing questions as we end this conversation. What's one popular belief about product management that you strongly disagree with?
I think the burden that we put on product managers, to call them as a CEO of the product, I think is actually half of the story. I think what they're doing is obviously they're making looking from end to end all the product decisions, but I mean again, they don't have the authority on all the decisions, and that to me is where the idea of CEO falls apart a little bit. The idea of CEO of the product, I really believe the product, as a product leader, your job is not just building the best product, is able to communicate the product within the company. And if you're able to communicate the product in the company, then what you're trying to do is you're trying to influence the best way the product can be invested and can be able to put in the market or deployed. So I think for me, the shift from becoming the CEO of the product, you're the chief influencer officer of the product. I think that's a number one myth that I think people have. And the second part, I do think that product management is a role that I think that there are a lot of instinctive aspect to attach to it, but I do think that the way you influence is the more data based your support model you can provide as you're influencing people. And I think that's a critical aspect is how are you able to think in terms of data and data-driven decision making, but data-driven decision making that allows people to connect with them. So I see a lot of people are very data-driven, but the data doesn't make sense if they're not connecting with them. So if I were to say that here's a market size, here's a TAM SAM, or SOM, what does that mean? It means that we are reducing the friction by 20%. If you reduce the friction by 20%, customer would want that. And they want this because for them, it's going to bring the investment by 10% more. Now, that to me is a better way of articulation of the data, right? So I think it's like, how do you contextualize the data? It's not just about the data. How do you contextualize the data with your stakeholders? I think that's really, really important. And it's part of, again, the influential model.
If you could instantly master one new skill outside of product or tech, what would it be?
It's interesting you mentioned this and you asked this question. So my son is a rising senior and we are started doing college visits for him. It's been just a lot of fun, especially my wife and I getting extremely geeking out, as we're going to those colleges. So he, of course, went to Northwestern a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't go there. But we went to University of Chicago on Saturday, and they had a course there. It's called molecular engineering. And I said, okay, let me look into that. What is molecular engineering? And I was, just looking a little bit deeper at just some research, and it just got me so excited. And it's kind of, not because of my molecular engineering at University of Chicago, because I think it's basically instead of looking at, if you do industrial engineering or mechanical engineering, you're looking at the application and you're taking from the top down and you're deconstructing the application to kind of see how you're able to apply for solving the problem. Where this is completely other way model, right? This upside down model. You look at the fundamental level of what drives certain aspects that can solve problems from ground up. And that could be, going the same fundamentals could be your mechanics, or it could be even at a quantum level. You can go into driving material science that can actually help you with your with transportation industry, or can also help with the cancer research at the same fundamental level. So I started thinking about it, and I said, am I doing this at work? I mean, this is a skill set that I probably have not practiced at a deep level. Because, for me, it's been always top down. It's looking at the application, deconstructing it, and then able to put this into feature sets. But this notion is so, is to me so appealing. And I kind of realized that it's kind of started happening a little bit in my company, which I've been doing more with my AI team. So I have an AI team, and that team is, look at the problems very at a fundamental level. And they're not looking in terms of what application they need to solve. They're building models that are just fundamental models that's going to help to serve the application layer as a backbone. So it's something which got me really excited. I may go back and take some class, maybe back in Northwestern too. But I think this idea of as you are looking for AI solving the tools and thinking about building the applications, it's also very interesting to see that the molecular level or at the fundamental level, things are things remain the same. And those are, areas that we still can go really deep and do, your not just scientific research, but even psychological research too. What exactly drives people, what incentivizes them, as we building the team. It can be just about, making the environment for them to be successful, but also go deeper in terms of what exactly tick from a psychological perspective, what exactly makes them much more purposeful. And I think that, to me, that idea is really, really interesting. So it's so funny you asked this question, but I've been thinking about this in the last 2-3 days. So let's see what happens.
I thought, looking at your background, I see a keyboard and drums, and I thought you might say that, hey, it's music, but you went a different direction.
Yeah, that's my sons. It's all my sons. I would say I try. Both my wife, my kids are taking Indian classical singing for the last many, many years, but I think they're the one who's actually excelling it.
Where can people connect with you, learn more? We'll be sure to drop a link in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think LinkedIn is the best way. for them to connect.
Awesome. We'll definitely drop your LinkedIn profile. Shobhit, first of all, thank you so much for the incredible insights. I learned a lot, anywhere from your emphasis on value proposition to learning about CPTO module. And now I have a new book to read, Zone to Win. So thank you so much for attending the podcast.
Thank you, Shobhit, again for having me.
And then if you're listening and you're ready to stop being seen just as a doer, just like Shobhit is, start stepping into true product leadership, I want you to take one step today. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and check out intentionalproductmanager.com, and you can join hundreds of other PMs who've done the exact same thing. Thanks again, Shobhit, and everyone. See you soon on the next episode of the podcast. Hey, be sure to check out our website at intentionalproductmanager.com to see how you can level up in your career.